I think that you guys are welcome to put things in the chat. You also, if you have a burning question you really, really want to ask before I move on, please feel free to unmute yourself. I think that would be fine. I'm happy to kind of take questions on the fly. This session is very much for you guys and what you want to get out of it. And I think all of the things you've talked about are things that we will cover, but certainly if you have a burning question, please feel free to chime in. So we'll start with kind of the myths and realities of entrepreneurship. So we'll talk through these, and if you have any of your own myths at the end or things that maybe you think are going to happen with a solo business or entrepreneurship, please feel free to talk about them, or maybe things that you have already learned you thought were true but aren't true. So the first myth is, all I need is a good idea to be a successful entrepreneur. All I need is a good idea to be a successful entrepreneur. That's I wish I could just sell good ideas, right? That would be wonderful if you could just say, I've got a good idea for sale for $1 million. We probably need something more than just a good idea to get started, though it doesn't hurt, right? That's what we've heard today, are a bunch of really great ideas on the call. Myth 2, if you go out on your own, you won't have to work so hard or such long hours. This is the idea that sort of the business might sort of take off as this little like spin-off globe and run itself, which tends not to be the case. And I think those of you who have already started businesses know this, but I think that there is a big difference. I remember going into the law firm to work on the weekends and to work on Saturday, and I might put in 1 hour of something that my boss told me to do. And I'll get so like, oh, look outside, it's sunny. But when I'm working for my own business, it's like, oh, I'll put in 6 more hours because I took on this project and I really like it and I want to get it done. So I think there's a lot of flip sides to these myths where there's kind of the silver lining to the things that end up not being true. You'll be able to deduct everything so you don't have to pay taxes. Alas, that is not the case, right? When we talk about business expenses and business deductions, we're talking about things that are really related to your business, and the IRS has kind of a keen eye on differentiating between something that's a real business and a hobby. Like, I think I could do a really good job in being an Andes taste tester, and maybe I could have a blog. I think I would be really good at it. I think I would increase sales there, but you know, the IRS would probably be like, you cannot deduct all of the Andes that you have consumed over the year. So the next myth we're looking at, if you work independently, you won't have to report to a boss. Now, interesting with attorneys, sometimes we say, well, we have a ton of bosses, right? All of our clients are our boss in some way, sort of giving us directions what to do. So in some ways, you know, that's not really the case with entrepreneurship, although certainly in many ways, you get to be your own boss. And I am actually, for one of the businesses that I run, I'm an employee of myself. So I'm an S corporation, and I have meetings that I think it's kind of fun. I have a background in theater, so I find some of the stuff comedic. So I make a big deal of the formalities. I sort of call the meeting to order. I make sure that I'm present and that we have a quorum, you know, and then there's kind of a sergeant in arms in case I get unruly, you know, and I have to calm myself down, and then I adjourn. And these meetings are like really fast, but I always think that's funny that I have these sort of big corporate meetings of myself by myself. So yeah, there is a boss, and sometimes you just kind of wear 2 hats. So myth number 5, business owners get to do the work they want to do and only what they find interesting. So this is not necessarily the case, right? All of us are going to have to do a lot of things in our business that used to be done by other people. Like maybe Cindy down the hall is the one who kind of processes the paperwork and enters in the payroll and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden you don't have a Cindy anymore and you're just doing it yourself. So that's not necessarily true. But at the same time, I think there is a silver lining to this. So I run a legal translation business. That's a lot of the work that I do. And I found there were times that I was working with companies who I didn't like working for. They were kind of a hassle. And sometimes I got feedback from their clients saying, you know, this person doesn't speak English very well. And I'm Italian, and I like the way I speak English better than the way. And I'm like, goodness gracious, I don't want to deal with this. So then I would say, I don't want to work with that client anymore. I'm not going to work with that agency. So in some ways, you can kind of trim your work and you know, prune the tree and figure out what it is you want to do. So there's kind of a flip side to that one. If you choose to be self-employed, you'll be limited in what you can achieve since you'll be working alone. That's not necessarily the case. I try to think of, there's some great homegrown businesses in Springfield. We have a lot of interesting entrepreneurship ideas. I think I just found out maybe the step and pull thing that you see on some doors. I think that's a homegrown business. I think it was even on Shark Tank. And there's some amazing small businesses here. I'm pretty sure that Johnny Morris would sell little fishing lures at, maybe it was through one of the liquor stores or something that his dad owned. I may be butchering that story, but in any case, it started as a very small business, and now we have Bass Pro that's international. So I don't think you need to be limited at all. It's as big or as small as you want to make it. So the reality here is that proper planning is key. So we have to be a little bit realistic about how many businesses really survive. But I do think that these statistics that show that people have a hard time keeping a business going maybe don't do the planning work that you guys are already doing, because you're coming to a SCORE workshop, you're maybe thinking about having a SCORE mentor. And I love the way that Katie was showing and characterized the approach to planning, where there's that moment of go or no go. And there's something actually that can be very successful, I think, in deciding not to move forward. So I think one of the attendees, the yoga and social anthropologist on the call, was saying, it wasn't the right time. So maybe it's just not the right time. Maybe it needs to be regrouped. Or I think our beauty shop owner is saying it's time to regroup. The business is not on the right trajectory. So there can be something successful in saying either we need to stop and rethink, or this does not have the staying power, or this doesn't have the funding it needs, or there's not enough of a customer base. So this is kind of a scary slide, but I think it can be a successful thing to see that that's why you guys are here spending the afternoon with us, because we have to figure out what we're going to do. So the go or no go that Katie was saying is great. With my clients, I talk about measure 3 times and cut once. Just make really sure that this is something you want to launch, and that can be a successful way of starting your business as well. So these are just different statistics after 3 years. So the percent of new business is 2+ employees. So I just have 1 employee, so I wouldn't necessarily be in these statistics. So that's the percentage after 3 years. And after 5 years. So if people can sort of stick with it, there's better staying power if you have that planning, and you have not just plan for what the first 6 months look like, but really down the road, and sort of that staying power, the measuring many times before cutting the fabric. So here's some critical success factors for entrepreneurship. Good choice of time and location, adequate capital, so the money to get the business started, the money, or in some ways, maybe even the insurance to get the business started, the funding, the ability to manage and multitask, and the education and experience in the field, a strong work ethic, effective time management, and a willingness to ask for input from others, which obviously you guys have a lot of these already, and that's what brings you to the table today. So if any of you wants to kind of unmute yourself or over chat, if you could let us know, what do you think makes you a strong entrepreneur, or somebody who would have the wherewithal, like one quality about yourself, even whether it's on here or not on the slide. You can just unmute yourself. If we talk over each other, we'll try to fix it, but go ahead. Somebody unmute yourself. What do you have within you that makes you a good entrepreneur? And I guess I can monitor the chat too, in case anybody wants to say.
So I'll go to get us started and get people feeling comfortable. So I have a small business as well. And I think the thing that has really helped me be successful is I'm a relationship builder. And I try to use humor. I'm not like the typical, I do lots of microloans and stuff. So people are used to like loan officers, and I just don't have that persona. So I think the thing that really sets me apart is just, number one, having the knowledge that I do, but also just being comfortable being me, finally, figuring out who I wanted to be and really just going with it. Much to Mr. Headley's chagrin half the time, but, and Katie's as well, all of them in SCORE, but yes.
That's true. Those soft skills are really important. And that's one of the things that when I started interacting with Mary and people at SCORE, that's the thing that brought me back, not just the huge amount of knowledge, but I was just like, those are like my people. I like those people, so we can't um, underestimate how much that's important to have that personal quality. And I was at a presentation where there were some SCORE people as well, some type of nonprofit or business, the solo, I guess the women's small business conference. And there were young ladies who do social media marketing who are much younger and much more with it than I am. And that's what they were saying. People aren't just necessarily buying the product or service, they're sort of buying that connection with you. They have to sort of fall in love with you and like you and want to be around you and trust you. So that's where I think sort of millennials and Gen Z, that's where they're finding value, not just in the product or service, but kind of in the person selling it. It looks like we may have gotten somebody to weigh in over chat. So Debbie is saying, I am a great leader. I think this will be something very valuable to my WBC clients. So yeah, the ability to lead, which is important for your team, for yourself, and for your clients as well. Anybody else want to weigh in on that topic, kind of what strengths you have as a business owner? Okay, Charlotte, I have a great location and a strong work ethic, but the timing seems wrong. So I think Charlotte also has a good ability to sort of categorize things and sort of analyze and say, okay, here's my strengths, but I have a weakness that I'm trying to tackle. So I would add that as a skill for her and an ability that she has that ability to be objective and to figure out, okay, what is going wrong, what is going right. Anybody else over, let's see, over chat? I think that was it. Well, feel free to chime in with those if you like. So Karen Maxon is also saying, I have a strong work ethic, education in the field, so that relevant experience, and willingness to ask for input from others. Let's talk about time management. Yes, let's, shall we? That's a big one, right? That's something that's very different when we're working on our own. It's very different to have to kind of figure out how to guide your own work. Candy saying, so this is the espresso lady, I'm going to remember that. I grew up working in coffee shops my parents owned, so I have a lot of experience, and I have a family who are all resources to help me on the way, and a family who knows that you can be successful starting a business. If you have a family who have always worked for somebody else, or they've always been in a trade, or they've been a welder that works for a company, or a doctor, and they're saying, well, this is crazy. You can't just go out and start a business. You have to work for somebody else. If you have a family of entrepreneurs, that's going to be that much easier, and to have that support. Any other information or skills that you guys want to share? Yeah, the time management is really key. When I was working for the prosecutor's office in town, I worked for a great boss named Dan Patterson. He's still the prosecutor there, and he's very like sort of military style and wants to know kind of how we can improve things and get faster. And so he said, well, maybe we can figure out kind of how long it takes to file a case, kind of get an average and pick up our speed. And so I took this very seriously, and I brought a little egg timer that was on my filing cabinet, and I would try to just file cases. And so there was all this beeping and these alarms going off, and people were always running like it was like a fire alarm or something. I always had these alarms going off. And so Dan finally stuck his head and he said, what is this? I explained, it's my little egg timer. I'm down to 5 minutes. I can file a drug case. It's really great. And he's like, well, you need to quit it because people thought I told you to do that and it's freaking them out. So I'm like, okay, no more crazy time management of the prosecutor's office. You got to kind of go with the flow. But if you are working on your own, you can use an egg timer and try to manage your time. That is you can Google Pomodoro method. Let me write that in the chat if I can. Let's see, Pomodoro method. Pomodoro method. That's a quick little thing you guys can be Googling on the slide to see if you like that time management method. Okay, so these are all kind of the critical success factors for entrepreneurship. Mary says, I use Harvest to keep time for myself, or Togi or Toji is a good one.
Toggle.
Is that a good time? Yeah, there's so many like apps now.
I use the Harvest one to keep time because I have different clients. And so as I'm working on a project, it's really eye-opening because I'm like, God, I worked for forever. And then I turn off my timer and it's like 12 minutes. And so really it's eye-opening.
Yeah, that would be an entire full other presentation, sort of time management and the tools to help you with that. Okay, let's see, maybe I can. I don't know if I can advance the slides or not, but we'll go on to the next one. So know your options. When starting a new business, right? What are the advantages and what are the disadvantages compared to working for somebody else? So the advantages, you're not hampered by, I'm sorry, starting a new business as opposed to starting one like perhaps this Candy's situation where maybe the family has already been running the business. So you're not hampered by previous image or technologies. You can choose the location, the name, the logo, and the relationships. You can explore new markets and directions. You can see your dreams come true. You can get into something that's untapped and wide open, and really where the world is your oyster to make money off of that particular idea. The disadvantages are that you don't have a base. You have to build all new. There's greater risk. There's no track record. Difficulty in financing, see your dream become a nightmare potentially if it's kind of difficult to really get it going. So, there's any number of jingles or logos we could show you, and immediately, the McDonald's arches and our mouths start salivating for a hamburger, right? So there's a lot that comes with an established business, sort of goodwill, we can call it, or the know-how. And instead of which, if we're launching on our own, that may be a bit more difficult. So we're talking about a new business, brand new, sort of never been done before. There are definitely advantages and disadvantages. So on the other hand, I think when we're just talking about buying an established business, the advantages would be the established clientele, suppliers, and location. Known quantity, proven formula or name, the special sauce on the, what is that, on the Big Mac, Big Whopper. Help in starting and running the business. You can review records. It's easier to obtain financing. So if you're going to buy somebody's business, that's what comes with that package. The disadvantage is that there could be potential hidden issues. That's poor reputation, loyalty to owner, out of date inventory or transfer issues. So that's where you really need to do your due diligence and go in and kind of explore, why are they wanting to sell it? This business is so great. Why are they wanting to get rid of it? No guarantee that success will continue. I think the idea of buying a business here, we're talking about the perspective of the purchaser, the person going in and buying the business, but selling a business is an interesting idea because when I've worked with entrepreneurs before, a lot of times people talk about, well, it's just going to sort of run itself, and I'm just going to go and check on it occasionally, like, the starter for some bread. I'm just going to check on it occasionally, but it's going to be working its magic on its own. And that really doesn't tend to be the case. But I was trying to test that theory and say, well, when might it be true? When could it be true that, this business is just sort of makes you money sort of independently of your work? And I thought, well, if you sell it, right? If you come up with this great business and you're thinking, okay, well, once I reach this certain mark, once it gets to be this successful, or once I have to work this much, if I can find a willing buyer and if I can cash out for $1 million, that's going to be great. That's my price point to sell my business. And even if afterwards that business goes on to make $10 billion, I don't care because that was my price point. So that was the one idea I came up with where a business really could kind of make money where you are not particularly involved. Is just where you end up selling it and are no longer involved. So that's buying a business compared to starting a new business. And then when we talk about franchises, the advantages are that you have a proven image and product or service, marketing and sales power, limited experience is necessary before you dive in, training and professional guidance, continued consulting relationship, access to other franchisees for help. So there's that strong network. I think that McDonald's is still kind of a franchise system, right? So you can buy in and sort of maybe Subway sandwiches as a franchise. So you can buy in and get all of that goodwill and that name recognition and all of the things they've built up over the years. The disadvantages, well, it certainly comes at a high price, right? Somebody who has created that franchise isn't going to, it's not a nonprofit effort here where they're just trying to help people get started in a new business. So you can have royalties and other fees as the franchisee, a loss of control. You're not always your own boss. You're going to have certain things dictated by the franchise, and there's operational boundaries and limited choices. We're not just going to be serving heroes and Thai curry at McDonald's, at our particular McDonald's, because we think that would be fabulous. There's a binding contract, and the franchisor problems are your problems. So I think a lot of franchising sort of, not that it can't be a good option, but sometimes it can be a little bit too good to be true, right? And you're really not going to be able to reap as much out of it as the original franchisor. I think there's some businesses in Springfield, like some restaurants that seem, even though they're a local restaurant, they sort of seem ready, like champing at the bit to get out and be a franchise. They already kind of look like some type of Chili's or something like that. And I think some of them have done that successfully. So it could be interesting too to think of your new business becoming a franchise someday. So a home-based business, the advantages are a convenient work location, right? You have like a 30-second commute, less expensive, a flexible schedule. The tax advantages, perhaps something to look at with your accountant if you want to take a deduction for a certain portion of your home or a portion of the utilities. I will say that that's something to really look at with a tax accountant, because some of these things get to be abused, shall we say, by people, and so then they turn into red flags for the IRS. And you really want to scrutinize that stuff, because while you can take deductions for things about your home or about travel and business travel, and that's combined with other things, the IRS really looks at that very closely. So you always want to follow the rules really carefully. So like we said, that's a disadvantage. There can be great IRS scrutiny on those kinds of decisions. And I will say that has to do, the IRS scrutiny has to do with deductions, right? Making sure that this isn't just my Andy's taste testing venture, which I do think would be really wonderful, but it's something, not just a hobby, it's a real business. Additionally, I'm so sorry if you could go back to that one, the zoning or deed restrictions, isolation from others, difficult financing, family distractions. I think some of this was more theoretical before the pandemic, and now everybody knows, right? Or most people have had at least some experience working from home or trying, like now, to do a Zoom meeting from home or from your home office. So if you are joining us from a home or home office, so that's something that's becoming a lot more kind of a tangible problem than it used to be. Nonprofit. I think there's several people joining us on the Zoom who are interested in nonprofits, and that's kind of my background. I've worked with nonprofit arts organizations. So I think nonprofits can be really great. The advantages allow you to operate in a non-for-profit status, no owners. You may qualify for government or foundation grants, protection from liability for directors and employees. You certainly want to look at insurance for your directors and officers of the nonprofit. You can pay salaries to employees and consulting fees for contractors. So you can still run and sort of make money at a nonprofit. It just needs to be reinvested. So it's interesting. In some ways, the nonprofit can be really successful and make a lot of money. It just needs to be reinvested and sort of either help your own nonprofit, or I think somebody said maybe help another nonprofit. That's all fine as long as it stays within the nonprofit ecosystem. But on the other hand, you know, an LLC, like somebody talked about before, you can run a sort of a do-gooder for-profit business. And if you run a lean, mean, happy little, you know, do-gooder machine, you're not going to have a lot left over to pay taxes on. So if that's the only concern and you're not as worried about sort of donations and that kind of thing, then maybe that might be an option for you. And I will say, of course, that I'm an attorney, and we are talking about legal stuff during this Zoom, but none of this is meant as a particular answer to a legal question you have, and I wouldn't be able to field anything like that today. I will want to encourage you, and one of our slides will show, to think about the people who can help you with your business. So it could be an attorney, certainly a CPA, a banker, an insurance agent, and then a mentor, perhaps through SCORE. Those are the people who are your sounding boards. And for any one of those people to help your business, it really needs to be kind of that one-on-one, and to be able to know really strong details about your business. So all of this today is more just education on sort of giving you some food for thought that then you can explore with those sounding boards. So with nonprofit, the disadvantage is, focus on educational or charitable purposes, and cannot profit those who created the organization. So if all of a sudden the thing takes off, and this thing that was meant to be for the good of the community also makes a lot of money, you know, that's not anything that can go into your own pocket, whether directly or indirectly. All profits must remain within the organization. You must apply and qualify for 501c3 status or sales tax exemption. So it's actually pretty easy to start a Missouri nonprofit corporation. And, I think it's interesting because a lot of times people talk about regulation and that there's too much regulation and government regulation and big government and that type of thing. But having come from working and studying in Europe many years, we have no regulation like in Italy and these places. I mean, a lot of times you have to sort of go and register and record a contract that you have between people. I mean, when you go stay in a hotel, you're going to give them your passport. I think they've now successfully regulated what it means to be Swiss cheese, what it means to be chocolate. We don't want to have adulterated chocolate. So there's just so many more regulations in Europe than there are here. And I think in some ways, there's just a lot of free reign to start businesses in Missouri and to get things going. And that can be a good and bad thing. So it's pretty easy to start a nonprofit. But yes, as we're saying here, in order to get that federal tax exempt status, there's a lot more scrutiny. So we're talking about these different types of businesses, right? For-profit, nonprofit, at-home, franchise, et cetera. And obviously there can be some overlap here. You could run a nonprofit out of your basement. So it could be a home business that's a nonprofit. So online businesses or virtual businesses, these are going to become more and more popular as people get more and more familiar with working and kind of living online. So we have lower startup costs, expanded geographic reach, convenience and accessibility, flexibility. The disadvantage of that low conversion rate in terms of converting to a sale, low barriers to entry. So there's higher competition because maybe anybody can kind of open a website and start doing things online. You might have visitor expectations. You don't have that personal contact and limited sensory info. So like Mary's talking about the soft skills of being able to interact and be one-on-one with your customers, you might not have that. But I do think an online business can be really a great model because when we're talking about having enough funding or having enough capital, you don't necessarily need much to start an online business. So I started my online legal translation business. And I just worked initially with what I had. And then once I made a little money, I said, hey, I really need some good software and a better computer so I can type faster. I need a monitor. So I only bought new things and sort of enhanced my business once my business made enough money for me to do that. So that's something to think about for online businesses and for other businesses as well. We don't necessarily, even though it's great to think about an SBA loan or to think about getting funding to really help your business explode, you can really start small and just use your own profits to make it bigger. That's online businesses, which I would call virtual businesses as well. So what are the characteristics of the entrepreneur? You guys have kind of shared some of these with me, right? We're talking about good time management, perhaps self-starter, resourceful, responsible, organized, hard worker, persistent, decisive, healthy, and a supportive family. So some of these things came up. Yeah, Candy was talking about, yeah, my family is a family of entrepreneurs. They get it. They understand where I'm coming from. I would talk about having an entrepreneurial mindset, sort of this idea that you want to go out and do these things and run the show. I always say when I start at a job, I can be sort of the girl Friday, and I seem like, oh, she really is the girl Friday. She's really the company man. She is just listening and doing and sort of towing the line. Well, that's just while I'm learning what's going on, because that's what I do. I try to learn what everybody's doing. How does this whole system and environment function? Then once I learn it, I want to change it and improve it and make it better. So I actually printed out an email and I've kept it from Mr. Patterson over at the prosecutor's office, who is a really great boss and very accommodating. And it went something like this. Dear Emilia, thank you for your many ideas. We hope to implement some of these in the near future. So that was my thing, that I can't turn off the entrepreneur in me. It's really hard to just say, hey, you know what, this is how things work here. I'm going to do my 9 to 5 and that'll be that. I'll just move on. So I think if you have that drive in yourself, if you notice that when you're working for other people, like, oh, I know how to improve things. I know how to do things better. Maybe if you send lots of proposals and that you make in Word with like pictures. I may or may not have done that before. Like, here's how we can improve things. That's kind of the entrepreneurial mindset. And that's something, if you have that drive within you, you probably aren't going to be that happy working for somebody else, and you really want to be running the show. So weigh in over chat. Just let us know over chat, because you are always welcome to kind of unmute yourself and talk, but I know that can be a little bit intimidating. So just let us know over chat, like, what's your entrepreneurial mindset? What is it that kind of drives you, or what's something that you've done that shows that, hey, I'm a person who wants to be in charge. So Mary's saying, yes, the idea is never stop. I get into so much trouble trying to fix things. I know, but it's just funny because at first, if you're just trying to learn what everybody does, and it makes you look like you're just going to toe the line. It's like, no, I want to shake things up. We got to do things way better around here. So if anybody else has ideas about what in you shows an entrepreneurial mindset or an entrepreneurial drive, I think that would be great to share. Because one of the things that I think is important before launching your own business is really thinking about why you're doing it, even before you go talk to your mentor, although certainly the mentor can help kind of tease that out. But talking about, okay, why is it that I think I have to go jump ship and just start my own thing? A lot of times people just hate their boss, to put it plainly. They just hate their boss, and maybe they've had lots of bad bosses. Maybe they have a working environment that's not a good working environment. A lot of us have dealt with that in work environments where maybe it's somewhat hostile. Maybe there are microaggressions. We're learning a lot more about that now, especially racial and minority microaggressions, where it floats beneath the surface and maybe other people don't see or don't appreciate what's going on, and it can create a really unpleasant work environment. The same thing for sex harassment or anything that's hostile about your work environment, or just having a bad boss who doesn't know how to lead, because we have all been in those situations. And so it's important to think about if there can just be maybe a better environment for you that is supportive and nurturing. And that is something where maybe you would thrive as an employee, and you're not really wanting to start your own business. You're just wanting to have a good and safe working environment, because certainly that's something we all deserve. So that's something to scrutinize, I think, sort of setting aside what's your business idea, because everybody has really interesting business ideas, but say, what is it that makes you an entrepreneur, where you just, like Mary said, you just can't turn it off? Because I think that's the person who's going to say, okay, I'll deal with tax stuff, I'll deal with accounting, I'll stay up late, I'll work weekends, because I want to see this through. This is my drive. So how many hats will you wear? You will be the CEO of your company, and you can give yourself whatever title you like, right? You can print up business cards with, I think there's a movie that my husband really likes where the guy's business card says something like handyman adventurer. And I'm like, why not? You can have a really cool name, anything you want to be on your business card if you think your customers will put up with it. But so you're going to be the CEO, you're running the show. You're doing the administrative work, you're doing accounting, you're doing human resources, marketing, sales, customer service, production and fulfillment, technology, facilities, all of that you're doing on your own. And what I'd like for you guys to think about, and you can share over chat if you want to, is whether maybe you fill some of those roles in your family or in your household or with your partner as well. Because I think somebody was trying to send something through to our family, and they sent it to my husband. I said, wait a minute, no, I'm CFO. I'm chief financial officer. I make I do that. We all have our roles, sort of landscaping and mechanics and stuff. So that's my husband. And then we have these shared responsibilities. So it's kind of interesting to think about the role that you play in your family, because you may already have some of this skill set. You may not have gotten a paycheck for it, but you may have some of this skill set already that you can apply to your business. Certainly people who take care of family members or take care of pets or take care of children, right? These are people with an ability to multitask and to be able to kind of get things done even while you're taking care of another creature or another human being. Let me see over chat what you guys are saying about this entrepreneur mindset. Let's see. So Candy, I care about excellence. I have gotten burned out working with people who are doing just enough, not going above or beyond. Also, it tends to be great to always be the girl showing up everyone by actually doing your job. Yeah, as if that's so over the top, right? Just to actually do the job. and not to fall short. Debbie is saying, when my husband went on his own as a land surveyor, it was because his earning potential was capped at what he was being paid. He was able to set his own rates and didn't rely on someone else to pay him. Oh, so it's, yeah, not great. So yeah, but I think what Candy is saying is, you really want to strive for more. And if you really want to succeed and not have to be the person who's kind of like, the do-gooder, or somebody who's just trying to show off, if you're in your own business, you can be as excellent as you want to. That makes me sound like Bill and Ted, be excellent to one another. So this is interesting what Debbie is saying about this idea of having your earning potential capped. One of the things that I think we can think about with entrepreneurship and with any job, I think it's important to think, where's the money coming from for this job, and how are we creating value? Because what can be interesting is if you think, well, in my particular job, maybe what I'm dissatisfied about is not that I need to be an entrepreneur and strike out on my own, but I'm not getting paid enough for what I'm doing. Well, at that point, instead of starting a new business, just ask for a raise, right? And so in order to ask for a raise, we probably need to figure out, okay, what value am I building? Where is this money coming from? What value am I building? And can you convey that to your boss and say, hey, I'm bringing in a lot of value here. I can earn more, and I can do even more to bring in more. The flip side of that, I was talking about this with my husband, I thought was funny. If you do all that in preparation for getting a raise and you realize that your particular position is not creating a lot of value, maybe it's good just to kind of work hard and stay quiet, just so people don't realize that you can be downsized. But most of the time, I think you will find that you're creating a lot of value, and you are able to capitalize on that by asking for a raise. And if that doesn't get you anywhere, and you're like the land surveyor, like Debbie's husband, it's time to kind of break out, because you are going to be in charge of creating value and figuring out what you can pay yourself for your worth. So marketing, this is the strategy used to create a desire to purchase, creates your company image, anything you do to keep and get a customer. Your product or service will not sell itself. Even if there is inherent value to it, that still needs to be conveyed in some way, right? So that's the idea behind marketing, and there's details on that in workshop 3, the marketing plan. Sales, so that's when you actually sell your product or service. Customer contact work, you're finding prospects, making presentations, preparing bids, closing deals, and processing orders. So all of that is sales, so that you can generate the revenues and the income to pay yourself. The product or service, you could be like this gentleman here and sell belts. The definition of offering, functionality, and packaging, quality, and differentiation. So when we're talking about a product or service, we have to ask ourselves, well, who needs it? Why do they need it? How is it different or better than the competition? So I used to work with theaters a lot, and it's one thing to say, oh, okay, well, we're putting on a play or a musical, and we're better than the musical down the street. Well, if we start thinking a little bit more broadly about what people are buying if they come to the theater, perhaps they're just buying entertainment, and perhaps entertainment is just a click away on their phone with Amazon Prime or Disney Plus. All of a sudden, if we really start thinking, what is the need that we're meeting for our customer? We need to start thinking a little bit more broadly about who our competition is. So that's something that's really good to do with a SCORE mentor, because they can come in with that objectivity and say, let's think about really what type of need you're fulfilling. So position, the location, right? The physical position where you're going to be selling from, the niche or target market, competition, distribution, and merchandising. So where do you kind of position yourself in the market? And some of that I think will be in your marketing session, but talking about kind of our, the difference between a high-end Louis Vuitton bag and something that's a bit more functional to take on the plane, right? These are different positions in that same market of sort of the market of things to carry stuff around. Charlotte's saying, I'm split between marketing to customers and marketing to booth renters. I'm having so much trouble recruiting. So maybe, I think Charlotte is the beauty shop owner, if that's the type of booth because I'm thinking of like trade shows, but I think you're talking about the booth renter. So it's interesting because and those are things, again, a SCORE mentor would be able to help you with, but there's different types of sales. So in my business, in my translation business, I'm B2B, I'm business to business. I'm not selling to the direct end user of the product of the translation I do, because all of those people are in Italy. All the people who want stuff translated from Italian into English, there are not that many people in Springfield who need that. So I work with people in Italy. So I'm just working with translation agencies. So it's interesting to think about when you're thinking about your product or service, you may want to be selling that, such as a haircut or a style or highlights or braids or whatever, what have you. You may be thinking about, okay, am I giving that directly to the person? Am I doing their hair? Or am I employing the people who are going to do hair or do massage or manicure or whatever? Or am I going to be just renting space out to people, and then they have to go find the clients and develop the relationship and have them come back, because all I'm doing is sort of like a landlord of the booth spaces. I hope I got that right. I think that was a beauty shop model that we were talking about. So business to business model. So branding, name recognition, qualification of the product or service, market identity, advertising. So again, if you're talking about your own business and you're doing your own salon, right, having that, or your own drive-through coffee shop, maybe that's something really important. It needs to be eye-catching and fun and something that makes people think, oh, my hair's going to look great if I go there, or that coffee's going to taste really good. If you're doing something that's more maybe land surveying or property marketing, that may be different, right? It's a different kind of approach to your brand. And if you're doing something like I do, where it's business to business, and once they get to know me, I do have a logo. I don't think it impresses my clients that I work with that much, right? Because the branding issue isn't as important, because that is really suppressed. It's really kind of kept down low compared to the brand of the people who are actually selling it. So that's branding, marketing and advertising. Yeah, getting your name kind of recognized in the market. Okay, finally, price, right? How do we set a price? It's interesting because I think a lot of times we think of a price for a product or service as just something kind of pulled out of thin air that sounds good, or something that has to do with what we want to earn. But we need to think about kind of the structure of price being the cost, right? The cost of the goods sold. So if we have a cup of coffee, right, we have the coffee distributor who's coming to provide that coffee. We have the cup we have to put it in. We have the labor of the barista and all the training that the barista has to do, and we have to pay Social Security. All of this stuff goes into the price of a particular cup of coffee. The same thing with a hairstyle, right? When we go to get our hair done, there may be lots of different products that are being used, and you have the person and you have their training. So all of that is the cost. And then we need to have the margin above that so that we can actually pay ourselves and earn a living and turn a profit, if you will. And so all of that is based on the cost, then what the competition will allow, the credit terms and discount, if you're allowing people to pay after the fact, and the consumer reaction. Well, I have talking about kind of figuring out pricing and about costs. I have a friend, Igor, who's a kind of a serial entrepreneur, and he started this great sort of general contracting business in Italy, and it was really great. It was really successful. Like, they did really great home projects and really good work. The problem is nobody would ever pay him. He had these 90-day timeframes. In Italy, it's all about who's getting paid and who's, the circle of payments, and it was just complicated. He said, I want to tighten that payment window down to nothing. What business that I can do, could I do any business in the world where that payment window would be nothing? Well, he came up with a car wash service, and the payment window was placing a coin in the slot. So if you didn't place the coin in the slot, the machine didn't go. And so that was important to him, to be able to cut down that time of getting paid. So the credit terms and discounts in terms of your pricing can be really important. And all of this is something that's good to look into with your SCORE mentor, and kind of that go and no-go approach, because if what we end up having is just too expensive to run, if we're going to make all marble houses or all igloo houses in Springfield, that may be just simply too expensive for the market. So next up, let's see. Okay, competition. So knowing kind of where we fit. And like I said before, being kind of creative about thinking about the competition, thinking not just what is my product? Is it a cup of coffee? But is it really serving kind of a greater need? Are we talking about maybe a convenience item? If it's a drive-through coffee shop, maybe somebody could say, oh, I'm going to go to McDonald's for a cheeseburger or get an espresso. Either way, I get a little hit of, life in me from either sugar or caffeine. Either way is fine. So maybe your competition is McDonald's, or maybe if you have kind of a sit down place, you're saying, okay, this is maybe a social environment. Thinking about hairstylists, right? We don't just go to the hairstylist and sit mutely, right? It's an interaction, it's a social interaction. So maybe your competition are other things that are kind of a social sphere. The size of the operation and the number of employees, the price and quality, the services provided, the reputation, personal visits and observations, suppliers and contractors, and other businesses in the area. So there's a lot that goes into the competition analysis, but it's important to be kind of creative and kind of expansive in your thinking to understand who might be in competition with you. Okay, I think we are about at the halfway mark before we're getting into the making it legal. Would it be a good time maybe for us to take kind of a stretch break, Katie? Would people maybe want to do like 5 or 10 minutes, get a drink, get a cup of coffee? What do we think? Would that kind of work?
Yep, I think this is a good stopping point. So what do you think, 10 minutes, or is that what you said?
I think 10 would be great. That's kind of a stretch break, coffee break, and then we will reconvene. So I think we're on the same time. So it's 3:08, so like 3:18 or 3:20, just to get back at that time.
Okay. Yep. Let's join back here. I mean, you can, leave your camera on or off or whatever, but come back to the meeting and bring your attention back at 3:18, everybody. Thank you.
Those, so you can ask those over chat, or you can just unmute yourself. So fire away if you have any questions. I think we have people still on break.
Yeah, we have a couple of people who signed off and are coming back in.
Great.
Were there any questions that we did not get to during the actual presentation? Katie, did you see any go through?
Well, I missed a comment from Carly. My passion to empower youth in Jamaica. I am constantly churning out ideas that I can turn into dollars to help fund youth programs, as well as coming up with the programs that will help provide opportunities. That's where my anthropology background peaks. So responding to that idea of where's the entrepreneurial drive, what is it that makes you a good entrepreneur? So we'll get started with the rest of the presentation, but feel free to jump on because this is the latter part of the session. So speak up with questions that you have or put them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer those for you. So we're going to talk about kind of making it legal. I know a lot of people have questions about their business, about kind of how to shape the business. So we'll get started with that. But I do think that, and Katie, you're welcome to advance the slide. I think that even before thinking about, well, what's the proper vehicle for my business? I think that a lot of people get hung up on that and are perhaps putting the cart before the horse. Because really it's important to just think about what it is you want to do and how you might accomplish that and how you can go about planning your business and talking to your mentor and what shape is this going to take, because the legal entity and the business type, that's really going to be a perfect match to that final version of your business. So sometimes if you get too hung up on what it is beforehand, it can kind of impede your thinking and kind of slow down your creativity. So certainly it's an important thing to decide, but it doesn't need to be decided immediately, provided you're not going to launch your business right away. If you're going to take the time to do the work to be a successful small business, then you can really put that sort of at the tail end. So once you do come up with your business idea and how it's going to work and what your competition is and all of that, then you have different options available to you. You can be a sole proprietorship where it's just you doing business. You can be a partnership where you work with other people. You can be a limited liability company, very easy to form. You can be a C corporation, so that's just a conventional corporation like the big corporations we're used to seeing and thinking about. And then an S corporation, so it's subchapter S. These are just sort of shorthands we use. But it's really important to speak to an attorney and to an accountant and to an insurance agent to start thinking about the best ways to run your business. So just briefly, I'll touch on a couple ideas. This is not an all-inclusive list of caveats or ideas about which of these to choose, because again, I'm not providing legal advice about your business today. We're just sort of talking about some legal issues. So if you go into business by yourself, and if you're just a sole proprietor and just going to start selling something or doing something, you don't have any particular protections of liability. You don't have that liability shield that can be provided by forming an entity that's separate from yourself. And so that's something to consider, is that maybe you don't want your own personal assets to be at risk for your business. So once you have that separate person from yourself, your corporation or your LLC, you can have some of those protections. The interesting thing, though, is that if anything does happen with your business, or if the business gets sued, it is technically like your doppelganger. It's like a different person over here from yourself. So if you show up in court to say, oh, okay, I'm just pro se, I just want to deal with this legal issue for my business, they'll say, no, it's not you, it's the business. So you would need to have an attorney. So just something to think about with sort of doing business in that way. In terms of partnerships, we need to be careful because partnerships can just sort of happen. If I say to my friend, Jackie, hey, Jackie, she's got a corgi and her corgi's fabulous. I'm like, let's start selling little knit sweaters for corgis. Great. Let's make a bunch of money doing it. Great. So then Jackie goes off and she's going to buy 85 million tons of pink yarn, and say, yeah, because Emilia and I we're going to do this corgi business. Well, all of a sudden, we have decided to go into business for profit. We are a partnership. She is my partner. And if the yarn guys come looking at me, I'm going to have to potentially pay up. So that's something to think about, that if you don't go about deciding on what the particular form and entity your business should have, believe me, the state of Missouri is going to figure it out for you. And the IRS is going to figure out for you. So that's something that is important to think about. And that's why it's important to choose one, because you could have one sort of foisted upon you by default. So there's options there, but it's sort of, on the one hand, we don't want to just launch a business and not have that type of protection, whether as a single person, or some of you have talked about going into business with a family member, a partner, or spouse. But on the other hand, we don't want to have that be sort of constricting and sort of create a vehicle and pay a bunch of money for it at the beginning and it doesn't fit our needs later. So if we keep it simple, we talked about this sole proprietorship or partnership, but if liability or taxation is a concern, and it should be, both of those things should be concerns for everybody here. So we want to make sure that that we look to an attorney and to an accountant and try to figure out what the best structure is. And when we're talking about liability, we're talking about an insurance agent as well. An insurance broker can be a really great resource to you guys, not just for purchasing insurance, but sort of figuring out where are the risks in this business, where are the kind of hazards, and what are the likelihoods that something go wrong, and to help you kind of do some risk management. That's what a good insurance agent is going to do for you as well, and an attorney, to sort of manage your risks and identify the risks. So property, liability, motor vehicles, umbrella, liability, workers' compensation, health, life, business interruption. There's any number of insurance products that you can buy. I tend to be a big fan of insurance. I like to say everything except the insurance they tried to sell me at Walmart for my $16.99 clearance hairdryer that I bought. I felt like I'm gonna assume that risk. I don't assume much risk in my life, but I will assume the risk of my $16.99. Maybe it was $8.99. It was really deeply I had like 5 clearance stickers on it. I'm like, that's okay. I will pass on the protection. But other than that, it's really good to think about both personally. So if nothing else, even if you don't start a business and you want to go talk to an insurance agent about your own coverage at home and thinking about what insurance you might have, it's a great idea. All we're doing with insurance is we're transferring that risk to somebody else and we're paying for the privilege. right? We're just paying those premiums so that the risk can go to somebody else. And, it's difficult to think about all the different areas of risk. And the good news is you don't necessarily have to. The insurance agent can do that with you and help you identify those issues. So regulations, as we said, it's lighter here than in Europe where they regulate Swiss cheese and chocolate, but there are still a lot of things we have to think about and about the different areas in which our business operates. You may need a business license and approval. So it's interesting. I run a home office and I run two businesses. I run a law firm and then I also run a translation business. For whatever reason, probably because the lawyers have lobbied, you don't have to get a business license for a law firm. So I don't have a business license for my law firm, but I do have to have one over my translation agency. Nobody in Springfield, nobody in America uses my services. Nobody, zero. Everybody's in Italy, but I still have a cute little business license that, I'm required to have. So it's, it's $25 or $50 or whatever. And it's something that I'm required to have. It doesn't matter if it doesn't even really make a lot of sense. It's not, nobody's going to come by and inspect it, but I'm required to have that. And so I do have my business license. So labor laws, right? If you're employing other people, there's a whole host of things we have to do to keep people protected and to comply with those laws. Immigration laws, if we're hiring somebody, I think there's already somebody on the call who's already brought up, right? The idea of working in Jamaica, studying in Jamaica, marrying someone from Jamaica. So immigration can come into any type of business. IRS and Social Security withholding and payments. I will say one caveat that's important with the idea of a liability shield. So if you have a business and you have that liability shield and you can have protection and insure the business and not risk your personal assets, there are some ways in which you can become personally liable for what happens in your business, or the ways that we call it in legal jargon, sort of piercing the veil, piercing the corporate veil. And one of those is if we have an employee and we fail to withhold tax and remit the tax that we're supposed to pay on their behalf, because that's split. Some of it comes out of your paycheck, but then some of your employer pays. If we don't do that, we can be personally liable, not just the business. And an important thing to note is that people get hung up on, and you're welcome to share if you've heard this before, but say, oh, that person's not an employee. They're a 1099. I gave them a 1099. The clothes do not make the man with the IRS, not at all. They are looking at the substance, and they have a lot of rules about who is an employee and who is not. So that's something to look into. It's not that you just give somebody a piece of paper and there you've knighted them, sir, independent contractor. It really has to do with what the substance of the work is. So that is a particular area that we need to be careful about with working with employees and with Uncle Sam. So this is your team, right? This is your team. This is your sounding board. These are the people you need to start your business. I think, and this is what I would highly recommend. A banker who can also be perhaps a lender for your business, a lawyer, an accountant, an insurance agent, and a business mentor. And there could be other people, right? There are other people who can advise you, but these are really the key people to have. So funding and cash management, next up. We have to think about what's your monthly cost of living, where are the areas where you can cut back. We think about outstanding debt, how much we have in savings, how much do we need to cover 6 to 12 months of expenses. And I think this was a time during the pandemic where some of this, when like I like to call them the very flush, cash heavy 90s, right? It's a very different world now. And I think a lot of people have had to think about this, about covering expenses. A lot of people have saved for a rainy day, but have not had to deal with it before the pandemic, and has really brought things into perspective. And so that could be a good kind of shock to the system for would-be entrepreneurs to say, okay, what would it take to sort of keep my family afloat? So what we're talking about here is more the personal side. And I think with some of you, there was somebody who does like budgeting as part of her business plan and business idea to help underserved populations figure that out and figure out how to budget. So this is really a huge thing. I think actually, even if you didn't start a business, but you went through this process of just figuring out your own personal expenses, it could be extremely valuable. And you might say, oh, no, I can't really start a business right now. And in fact, there's some things we need to work on at home. As I mentioned before, kind of jokingly, that I'm the CFO for our family. You know, I'm make the budget and the decisions. It might be worthwhile, if you have any concerns about finances, to really think of your household and your home as a little business and start thinking about budgeting and line items. You can do financial statements for your business. You can say, what's the income statement? How much money's coming in and how much money is going out? What type of balance sheet do we have? What assets do we have? Do we have a house? Do we have a car? And it might be interesting for you as kind of a practice to go through that with your own household and to run the finances of your household in a formalized business-like way. If you have any concerns about the financing of your business or how it's going to run, it's going to give you a good test run of money that you're already spending and budgeting that you already need to be doing. And we have a couple of questions here. I appreciate these coming in over chat. So do hobby businesses need a business license? So what you can do, Karen Maxim, because I'm not quite sure of the term hobby business, because again, in terms of the IRS, they differentiate hobby from business. Those are two different things. So without answering your question specifically, what you might do is just talk to the licensing people. They're nice. There's just a phone number to call through the springfield.gov website and just see if you're required to have it. That is a good thing to kind of correct if you needed one. Charlotte is asking, when should you decide to grow bigger and push forward or cut back and insulate? You know, that is such a good question. And that is really a question for a business mentor. When you're talking to an attorney, you're talking to somebody who's pretty risk averse. And that's not always what you need with business. You need to be able to think, hey, the market's hot. This is a really good idea. We need to maybe get some capital and expand, buy new things, open a new shop. So that's something to talk about with your business mentor, but it has to do with, you know, what are you expanding to do? And is there a market for what you're doing? Because there may be a market for maybe a 4-chair salon in the downtown area, but is there also one 2 miles away with 6 more? But, you know, we have to figure out whether there's a market for our services. And then we have to figure out, can we bankroll that in the time that's needed to sort of build a following? So that's really a question for your SCORE mentor, business mentor, and it has to do with both, you know, the all of the marketing and whether the thing can be successful, and then whether you have the cash flow and the means and the resources to get it going. So yeah, it's going to take some analysis, I think, to answer that question. So when you're looking at and we have a note from Alina, business licenses are from city, state, county to be able to sell or conduct business, hobby. Okay, so I will say that business licenses, yes, that is true, that to run a business, you may be subject to the licensing regulations. And like I said, you just call the city, they'll direct you towards it. Some places are exempt. Like I said, law firms don't need to have it, but translation businesses do. So essential considerations with our startup cash needs. What tools and equipment do you need? Leasehold improvements, licenses and permits, professional fees, initial inventory, working capital reserve fund. So what do you need to really start your business and run it? That's what we need to figure out, and figure out how much money is needed to start it up. And then you go through the analysis and figure out, okay, what's the break-even point? You know, how much money do we need to make in order to say, okay, we've paid back what we've put into the business, and now we start turning a profit. So that's where you can really use a mentor with that kind of experience to crunch the numbers and to project. That's what we want to do. Not just like, I'm excited, I have $10,000, I'm going to start this business, but what does it look like down the road? Because if we always stay kind of, this is our initial investment, we're always kind of hovering here and it never takes off, and I never have much of a margin, just potentially you're going to be exhausted. Or, you know, maybe it's fine and you don't need much to live on. But otherwise, you know, we want to see that grow, and we want to generally see our margins improve. This is the operating cash, what you need: salaries, rent, insurance, taxes and fees, advertising, loan interest and principal, utilities, and maintenance. So everything you need kind of on more the intangible side in order to have your business run. And certainly if you have a loan that you've taken out, you're paying that debt service, you're paying the bank for the opportunity to use that money. So this is where we could potentially get money to run our business. So if you have equity in the business, that's the owner's equity. That's what you have that you own. If you have a home, you know equity from the money that you have in your home, that if you were to sell it, you get to keep that portion of it. So you might have an ownership stake in the company you run because you're using your personal savings, maybe family and friends are starting, you're having contributions from the people you're working with, or profits retained in the business. Now, I will say this is something to talk about with a CPA and attorney, because if you're talking about getting money from people and saying, hey, if you give me $1,000, I'm going to turn a profit, you'll get back 2,000. That's called a security, and that's regulated, right? The Securities and Exchange Commission. So we do need to be careful about sort of getting money from outside people with the promise of turning a profit. So that's something to think about. But there's a difference between just saying, okay, bank, please give me some money and I'm going to owe you money and I'll give it back to you. You don't have any interest in my company. You don't have a stake in deciding what I get to do. But the bank can give you money to fund your business. The Community Express microloans, credit cards, not recommended. We do not want you guys going into personal debt in order to fund your business, because we can't be afraid to show the bank, hey, this is what my business is. It's going to be a good business. I'll be able to make the money back and pay you back. If you can't convince the bank, then there's no reason to sort of get it in on the sly from the credit card company, because they're not going to care, right? They're just going to give you your 25% interest and demand the money back. So yeah, thinking about the difference between equity, which means ownership and a stake in the business, and debt. And thinking about when you talk to your SCORE mentor and talking to SBA, you know, what kind of security or what kind of collateral, what kind of guarantee might be required in order to get that loan? What are you risking if you can't pay it back? This is what they're looking at for you: character, commitment, credit rating, cash flow, collateral, and capital. There's all these C's, right, with what they're looking at before they provide you a loan. They want to see, are you knowledgeable in this industry? If I go in saying I'm going to start a restaurant tomorrow, never having waited on a single table, they're going to look at me a little bit askance. Personal investment, you know, do you have skin in the game? Are you risking something and not just the bank? Financial history, financial projections, management skills, and competition. So that's something with your mentor you can come up with, the business plan to kind of show that you are ready to start rocking and rolling. Your most important asset is cash. What we want to think about is opening a separate bank account for your business. So you're going to deposit all that money. Just keep them separated, right? I think that's some type of 90s song. Keep them separated. That's what we want to do. We want to make sure that our business and personal expenses are not commingled. That's an attorney word for kind of mixed and mashed. We don't want to keep them in the same place, because when I was talking about that idea of piercing the corporate veil, that's what might happen. If I'm routinely going with my business credit card through the Starbucks drive, they're going to be like, this is not a business. This is just you. There's no liability shield. This is just Emilia, right? So we want to keep everything separate. We want to be able to reconcile our bank account and have adequate cash and cash flow. Because remember, you might be getting paid at the end of the month, but maybe all the people you owe money to are there wanting money at the beginning of the month. So it's important to have enough of that cash flow. So that's one of the financial statements we look at, is not just the income versus expenses, but the cash flow. How much money do you have to keep things going? If you're a seasonal business, if you're a fireworks stand, or somebody said Christmas ornaments, they're wanting to sell Christmas ornaments. Well, they may have huge numbers, right, in October, November, December, but then what happens the rest of the year to keep the business going? Well, you could do Halloween, I guess, and kind of have an extra little month. So it's important to have enough cash flow to keep going. Okay, let's see. I heard banks that do SBA lending don't invest in certain types of businesses. How can you tell which bank is friendly to your business? You know, maybe I'll let one of the other ladies respond to that over chat, because I know Mary maybe can answer that over chat. She has a lot more experience with sort of small business loans. Small business readiness, oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead. Over.
Yeah, we're actually doing that, talking about that in the webinar that's on the 27th of May, or 25th, 27th. The last one in the session series is on funding. And so Jesse Huey with Bank of Missouri, who is an SBA lender, and myself who I work with CDFIs to do SBA loans, microloans. We will be presenting that, and we will discuss that in much more depth at that time.
Wonderful. Okay, so a full, not just one response over chat, but an entire webinar.
We're
I
going to
encourage you to sign up for that.
Yeah. Well, if you signed up for this and you signed up for all 5 sessions, you're signed up for it. And we'll make sure you have the links and all that for each one.
And if you were thinking, oh, I need more details on marketing, or I need more details on how these financials are going to work, all of that is covered in the upcoming session. So Emilia is giving us a great introduction, and we will dig down deep into all that stuff.
Yes, thank you. So we'll look at this small business readiness assessment. I agree wholeheartedly. I hope nobody was overwhelmed today. It's just sort of to give you all of the different sort of an overview of what's available to you. I can imagine it was a little overwhelming. This is just chock full of information, but as the ladies are saying, then in the individual sessions, you'll be able to dive deeper into the different components. So here's a quick self-assessment we can do to indicate the strengths and areas to work on with your mentor and other associates. 10 minutes to fill in and score, 5 minutes to share some of the areas to work on with a mentor. So go ahead, Katie, how are we going to approach this survey?
So if you picked up a packet, then you'll have this in your packet. It's called the Business Concept Feasibility Assessment. For those of you that don't have the packet, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so I can put the link in the chat. It is on that page we shared early on. Just give me one moment and I'll share it in there. And we're going to take this assessment again during the last class so you can kind of see what progress you've made over the course of the class. Just one moment. There. Okay, so you'll see a direct link to the Business Concept Feasibility Assessment and the link again to all of the handouts for this series. So if we want to take just a few minutes to fill that out, and then Emilia, whenever you're ready to kind of come back to it, you might even be able to just note your answers on a piece of paper or something like that if you don't have a printer.
Okay, hopefully that was enough time. Let me know over chat if you'd like to have a little bit more time on that, a minute or two. Otherwise, we'll kind of get started. And maybe you guys can use your famous multitasking while we go through some of these slides talking about business planning. So go ahead and feel free. And Kitty, are they submitting their responses online or just sort of keeping it for discussion?
Yeah, you won't need to submit them. Sorry.
Okay, great. So then that can just be submitted while we're going through the remainder of the slides. So hopefully there was enough time there to kind of get into the meat of the responses, and then you can kind of finish up as we go through the last of these. So we're going to go over business planning basics, and again, that's something that a SCORE mentor can help you do. And we have about 12 minutes left, so I encourage you guys over chat and over just unmute yourself and ask questions. Like Katie said, this is very much the overview, the introduction and overview, a lot of information that then we'll be able to explore more in the upcoming sessions. So business plan basics. Business plans are important, but I don't think there's a one size fits all. You don't have to have some fancy thing that's like bound and has different components. You know, it's not going to be a grade for an MBA class. It's just something to show that you have put some thought into how your business is going to work and how it's going to succeed. And I think there are some components that are important, and it's good to make a plan, but it doesn't have to be this sort of prefab sort of perfect thing that's set out. If anything, it's sort of the journey is the destination, especially if you're working with somebody else to sort of talk about how the business is going to work. So when you do that, then what you can create is an objective view of your business. It becomes a foundation for your planning. It's a good management tool, communicates the owner's ideas, and then it's something that you can show to a lender to help create some faith and trust in your business. So contents could be the table of contents, the executive summary, the business financial forecasts, and supporting data. So there are books out there that show you how to write a business plan. You can definitely come up with your own kind of creative way. The idea of an executive summary is just for somebody who is busy and doesn't want to read your 30-page business plan. If you can have kind of an abstract or that executive summary, that allows somebody to get interested enough to read further. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about making a business plan, I think what's important is not to get hung up on sort of the final version of the plan, but just thinking through how do you go about kind of exploring your business from an objective way and to be able to communicate what your business is to other people. And that's really important because I think there's a lot of things that about your business that need to be communicated in an objective way. Certainly financial statements, right? To be able to show in a standardized format how your business can make money and to have financial projections, that just needs to be objective, not like, hey, I've got a great idea and it's going to be fabulous and make lots of money. You need to have those ways to show objectively what your business is going to be, and you need to go through the process of planning. And so it doesn't have to be sort of a gussied up business plan that you struggle to write. The same with strategic planning, like I think Charlotte was talking about, regrouping and reassessing the business. It's an ongoing thing. It's sort of living, breathing documents that you're creating. So as we're winding up the session today, talking about kind of how to move forward and what to do to sort of continue on with your business planning and you're sort of developing your ideas for your business and how to create a trajectory towards success, you can sign up for the Simple Steps for Starting Your Business series. So there's also free one-on-one mentoring with SCORE. And I really can't say enough about SCORE. I am a SCORE mentee. I started with my mentor in 2007. And most recently, I think I visited him a couple of years ago. I deal with foreign currencies, and I had a really tough time trying to figure out some accounting things. And I'm talking to a guy who was CFO of a big, huge, I think, multinational company. He was able to solve the problem for me. And in fact, I met with some CPAs, and it was a really challenging sort of international topic. So Don't think that within SCORE there isn't somebody for your particular niche who can help you. There's some amazing relationships that you can forge, and it's really based on what you need. It's one-on-one for you to sound out what might be a good option for you. And these are people with a lot of experience. And so, for instance, with my SCORE mentor, he brought up some things that I hadn't thought about. He said, hey, you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, and that's great, but have you ever thought about being a management trainee? Have you ever thought about going a different direction? That's not anything anybody in my family would have ever said or anybody would have thought of. And it was so great to have somebody who really cares about you. And it's not just about the particular business plan, it's just kind of seeing you grow and thrive. And so I really recommend getting a SCORE mentor. It's a great program, people with a lot of experience. You can test the feasibility of one or multiple business ideas, right? Don't be afraid to sort of put things out there and figure out what might work. And then when there's something that's really going to catch fire, okay, let's work on a business plan. Let's look at financials. Let's project outwards and see when you're going to break even on this business. Let's see if there's a good market for this and a good way to position your product or service. You can learn more about topics presented in this session because, like we said, this was jam-packed. If your head's about to explode, I get it. I hope you can get like to some Andes or something because there's just a lot of information presented today. Defer your decision about going into business for yourself for now, but don't give up on your dream. Work with a SCORE mentor to fine-tune your idea. So hopefully, a lot of times people with a great idea are very excited to get going, and they wanted to get going yesterday and they're calling you late, but it needs to start tomorrow. So if that's the case, just try to scrutinize whether that is really important to start so quickly, because I think you'll be a lot happier if you're able to do some planning. I think the fact that you guys are here at this session means that you are willing to put in the work to do that, because it'll allow your business to be sustainable, to grow, to do those things that you want it to do if you spend the time at the outset. If you are already in business, talk to a SCORE mentor about your options. Like we said, our beauty parlor owner is saying it's time to regroup. We have to figure out how to move forward, to expand, to grow, to develop. It's great to do that midway. And like I said, I met my SCORE mentor when I incorporated in 2007, but now I continue to see him when I have issues cropped up and when I have challenging things to go over. So it's a really great program, and I do hope that you guys spend some time in these sessions and taking advantage of these amazing, I mean, oh my goodness, SCORE is such a cool program. There are more resources than you could ever deal with or access. I mean, there's so much available to you. But I think in addition to these types of sessions, having that one-on-one time is really, really cool, really, really valuable with your mentor, and allows you to either build your business or grow. So next slide, please. So these are the sessions you guys are doing. We've done the startup basics, but session 2 is the business concept. Then you'll get into marketing, financial projections, funding sources, and next steps. That's kind of the overview. And this is how you can get to the web page for starting your business. That's the student web page, so you can get links to handouts, workshop materials, and additional resources. So hopefully this kind of answered some of the questions that you guys were hoping to see and hoping to get answered. It was very interesting to hear about your businesses. I do wish you guys the best of luck in getting this either started off the ground or kind of having that willingness, like I think Destiny said, to say, hey, this isn't the right time to do it. I need to start it later or in a different fashion. And I do hope that those things go very well for you. If I can say, in terms of deciding to strike out on your own, in addition to all the things we've talked about the kind of how to do it, I think it's important to think about why and what you're looking for. And for me personally, if I can share what I was looking for in working independently, it was 3 things that I really wanted that I couldn't find working for somebody else. One was autonomy. I just wanted to work. I didn't want somebody else telling me what to do. I worked for a great theater company. I went on the road. We had a boss. He would say things like, everybody, we got to move all this stuff from stage left to stage right. And so we moved it all. And he's like, I made a mistake. It's all got to go back. You know, that is not autonomy. That's the opposite of autonomy. That's not getting to decide the best way to do things. And that was really important to me. And the second thing for me is ethics. I really wanted to make sure I don't want to make $1 million. I just want to do things the right way. I don't want to have anybody ever lean on me to take a shortcut. So it was really important that I could be in charge of myself because I want to do my best to do things ethically and to do things the right way. And then the last thing, I just wanted to do something that was good, not pure cancer. I'm not capable of doing things that are really, really amazing. But I just want to do something that's good, that adds a little good to the world. And if it's translation or working with nonprofits, it's just a little bit of good that I can put out in the world, as opposed to sort of carrying stuff from stage left and back. I don't feel like that adds a lot to the universe. So I would encourage you guys to just think about, when you're thinking about striking out on your own, what those things are that drive you and how you can find them on your own. So then when you're in the midst of planning and finding money and all that kind of stuff, you don't lose sight of what is actually driving you to do things. And I think some of you guys have already articulated that, the person who wanted to work in Jamaica and to work with underserved youth. If you have that drive within you, that's going to be kind of your lodestar and help guide you, even when things get a little bit tough, that you'll have like, no, this is the reason I struck out on my own, and hopefully SCORE will help you do that. And I would also encourage you, I'm a big fan of the library. There's so many wonderful resources there, and there are lots of ways to just sort of be self-taught and to start a business using the resources that the community offers you. So thank you to Katie and to Mary, to SCORE, and to the Springfield Greene County for hosting this. We really appreciate this, and I appreciate getting to meet you all. I wish you the best of luck in your businesses.
Okay, thank you, Emilia. We've got just a couple more things that I want to show you before we let you go here. So if you have not noted that web address that's up on your screen right now, there actually is some handouts there that you will need for homework. I don't know if anybody told you this class has homework, but it does. So note that address. Even for those of you that have packets, some of the homework you need is going to be on that webpage. Let me switch slides here. So this is your homework. It is to write a vision statement for your business or your business idea. Listed here, what it should contain in your workbook. If you have the workbook, if you picked it up, there is a vision statement worksheet in there that you can use to do that, or that's also located on that student website we just showed you. So that is what will help you guide through that process. And then the second one, and this is going to come up in several other of the sessions here, is to read the business plan and background for Anne's Nursery. So again, that's on that website, score.org/startyourbusiness. And before you go, if you would, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to throw a link in the chat for just a really quick evaluation. It's only 3 questions. If you don't mind to click on that link and take that evaluation in Google form. One moment, and I'll put that in the chat.
And Katie, can I just interject there that you may, so our chapter, SCORE National as a whole, has recently upgraded their CRM and all of our event management to be automated. And you guys are, you're number one, like the first event that we've had since we switched over to this new format. So for the next webinars, like for the next week's upcoming, you should start seeing automated messages with the links and things like that. If you're not seeing them, please let me know. I put my email address in there earlier, but it's swmo61@scorevolunteer.org. Also, it might send you an automatic evaluation, because I went through and marked who all attended. And so all of you should potentially, you might get another evaluation. Please do that, because that score goes up to not only for our chapter, but for SCORE National, and that's how we count attendance. So that one is not, I don't think it's any open-ended questions. I think it's just, rating, giving us all 10s. Anyway, just saying.
Okay. Any final questions either about the structure of the class or what's next, or any questions for Emilia? Well, we have her expertise here.
I just want to say thank you to Emilia. Emilia was a presenter for us at our 2019 E3 Women's Conference, when we got to do in person. And we almost got her as a SCORE volunteer, but there was just a little nagging issue with, her being part of the bar. So, so we still love to use her and allow her to work with, work with us because she has such great knowledge to share. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you guys for having me. Thanks a lot.
Everything's saying they need permission.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Let me see what is happening.
And Emilia took time away from the cutest little baby to come talk to us today. I got to see her beforehand and she was adorable. So I was like, if you have puppies, kitty cats, or babies, we'll see them.
Yes, please introduce all cats, dogs,
Yeah,
and
that is the
babies.
fun thing about Zoom, because I don't know if we would have had Timothy the cat if we were at like a hotel ballroom. So I like